Hello, everybody. This is Eva Melton, and welcome to Communal Expressions. This podcast is co hosted by Richard Rice. And tonight we're going to be talking about immigration policy and local leadership with a sheriff candidate, Jefferson County Sheriff candidate, Mr. Mark Pettway. And one of the reasons we wanted to talk to him about immigration, of course, is that every time that we turn on the TV or turn on social media or some type of media outlet, we're being presented with images of parents being separated from their children. This is a very emotional time, a time which everybody is speaking as they should be. But we want to hear from Mark to see what he thinks. This basically has happened because of a zero tolerance immigration policy that was set in place earlier this year. But the impacts of that has been over 2,000 children have been separated from their parents as they cross the border, coming seeking safety in the United States. So we're just going to have a candid conversation with Mark. And so go ahead and tune in. Mark, how are you this evening?
Doing great, Eva. Doing great.
Okay, well, thank you for dialing in. The first thing I want to know is, you see a lot of what's happening with the people, with people coming into the country, basically seeking safety. But now, because of the zero tolerance ban for immigration, it is now becoming deemed as being illegal. Do you have any specific thoughts about what you're seeing in the media?
I do. I am not happy with what I see, what I'm seeing our country do right now. We are better than what I see this country is doing right now on television. We are better than that. We need to be the country that we are built to be. And right now, just very embarrassed. And right now, we're not the country that we could be. We could really go out there and help these people that are trying to come over. They're coming for opportunities. They're coming for asylum. Um, they need help. They want opportunities, and we are the country that can give it to them. But we're shutting them out.
Right. Richard, did you have any follow up for that?
Yeah, I do. I think Mr. Pettway is right, just right. I think that this is a country that's founded on, principles of, being an open democracy, a welcoming country. It's kind of been our competitive advantage with other nations around the world is to be a welcoming place for people to come, people who would feel like they've been discriminated against or they don't feel like they have opportunities in their home country. This is the land of opportunity. But what we've seen is recently that based on the projections of our country becoming what is called a minority majority country within the next 10 to 20 years, based on whichever projections you use, you've seen certain groups within our country who have began to kind of, discourage immigration based on those reasons. And we see it like being dressed up in all different types of rhetoric, all different types of false statistics being put out. But what we know is that most of our small business owners, most of our job creators are either, first generation or second generation immigrants. We understand that like some of the rhetoric that's being put out about immigrants being criminals, all of these types of things is really just being put out to demonize individuals based on coming here for, seeking opportunity. So I think we really have to be mindful about that on the local level. What can we do if we don't necessarily have control of what our policies are coming out of our federal government? What can we do here locally? And so I think it's important for us to remember kind of like what our roles are for a local government. And so I'm happy to hear Mr. Petway speak about that. And, I'm kind of interested to hear his thoughts on, how we can, reserve some of our resources on a county and city level by focusing on, what those responsibilities are and not allowing those, the sheriff's department or local police department to be used for immigration and customs enforcement.
Now, the past mayor made a statement saying that we will be a sanctuary city, saying
Right.
that we were open to those that were looking for opportunities. Now, I like what he said, and I do believe that as a Christian person that we need to do that. But we are not a city. We're not a state that is a border state, which is, I guess, right now plays out good for us, especially with the Attorney General. Um, that well, the Department of Justice has our old Attorney General who is enforcing these laws right now in the zero tolerance. But we're not. a border state. So we do not have people crossing in coming into the United States through our through through Alabama.
Right.
But we do need to make sure that if we do encounter somebody, I am in law enforcement. If we do encounter somebody in law enforcement, we're not actively out there trying to profile people to see if they are citizens or if they are not citizens. We do not need to be checking for that. And I would hate for the United States to get to that level to where we check people just because of the color of their skin or what they look like or the type of language that they use to see if they are citizens of the United States every time we see somebody drive up and down the road to be able to see if we can stop somebody and put them out the United States.
Right.
We are better than that. We do not need to be profiling. It has happened for years. It's happened to many groups of people that are living right here today. So we need to make sure that we do not go down that road again.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. And a lot of these infractions where individuals are coming into the United States without having a proper documentation, most attorneys would argue that it's a civil offense. It's not even a criminal offense. And then if some people would argue that if it is a criminal offense, that it's a misdemeanor. And I mean, in your general experience, usually when someone is guilty or, alleged to be guilty of a misdemeanor, that's not necessarily something that we use jail time for, especially not grounds for us to separate a family.
No, it's not. And I would hate for us to overcrowd our jails with people of minor offenses such as those that you're just calling out and evil, and even get to the point to where we're backing up our court system to where we have to go out there and get more judges to come in and review these cases. It's costing more money to be able to house them, taking care of these individuals that may have medical issues, separating them from their families and try to bring them back together again. It is a problem all the way around. Just dealing with the whole situation. They did not think about what they were doing when they said zero tolerance. They had no thought to the process whatsoever. Now they have created a huge problem. We're looking bad around the world. Now we're backtracking on a lot of what we said that we wanted to do, trying to make a show and put fear into a certain group of people to make sure that they don't do what we thought that they were going to do. That fear was a thing that they thought was going to be the weapon to stop them from crossing their border, and it didn't happen.
Right. That's true, yeah, because the issues are so much deeper than fear. It's like we can think back to the early '90s, mid '90s, maybe even into the '80s as well. I would think where we had all this rhetoric on being tough on crime, and we were locking people up and putting them in jail. And what we saw is that we incarcerated so many more people, and primarily it was people in black and brown communities, poor people that were being incarcerated, but it did not reduce the level of crime. It did not reduce the level of drug use. Most of these people that were incarcerated were being put in jail for possession of drugs or, some other type of offense. And so here again, we see that same type of rhetoric again being used to say we're tough on immigration and all these types of things. And what it really comes down to is economic concerns and making sure that we have safety in some of these other bordering countries, in particular Mexico and in some of the other Latin countries. It's like a lot of times some of the U.S. foreign policy has created the conditions in these countries that really put the necessity on the individuals to seek asylum or seek refuge in the United States. And then now we're responding in an inhumane way, and I heard you earlier and your wife speak about some of your convictions as Christians. Can you talk a little bit about why that informs you to respond differently to those type of situations?
Yes, wholeheartedly. I would love to just give my view as a Christian about these views. Because in the Bible, you see the same situation play out. This is nothing new. There is nothing new under the sun. This is definitely not anything that we can call new. It happened back in the days, even right before Moses was born. We can see in the Bible where Joseph, his brothers sold him into slavery, and then after that he went into the palace and he was in a royal position. But the family that sold him, which was his family, they ended up living in a land of famine. poverty, destitute. So they had to go down to Egypt, not knowing their brother was there. They went down to Egypt, which had plenty.
Mm.
And when they got to Egypt, they were able to get food. But then eventually, they ended up moving to Egypt. When they moved to Egypt, the family stayed there. And the Egyptians looked at them and said, hey, they are populating. They will overcome us because they will outnumber us. That
Right.
fear set in.
Hmm.
And because of that fear, they want to oppress these people and depress them and control them. And they ended up putting them in slavery. I can
Yeah,
see the
that's
same
it right
thing
there.
playing out now.
That's it exactly. I mean, that's exactly right. And it's one, I think I've heard a quote or read it several times where it basically says that all human action is based out of one or two emotions, either love or fear. And so many times we've seen, and it's Republicans and Democrats as well. It's not necessarily party affiliated, but we've seen it kind of be kind of accelerated under the current administration, in which there's so much rhetoric of fear being promulgated and being used to kind of put us in a position where people are acting out of fear and they're not really doing things that they believe in, but they feel like they don't have a choice. And I really believe that, it's a void. We have a void of leadership. We need people that can speak clearly and transparently about the issues that face us. Be honest with people, because I think that we underestimate everyday individuals' ability to grasp these situations. We need to be honest, but we also still have to be hopeful because, we have the capacity to create based on whatever vision that we cast. And so, I think that's one of the reasons why I gravitated towards that campaign, because I feel like you have a demeanor that kind of balances the authority and the power of your office. Can you talk a little bit about how you approach issues like this, where you do have maybe some grim statistics or you have a grim situation, but where you kind of talk a little bit about how you use hope and your ability to inspire people to kind of get them to do a better job in addressing some of these issues?
Oh, yes. Well, first, let me make this clear before I do that. Now, I want you to know that I do know that we have been under attack right here on our own soil by some people from other countries. Now, I don't mind people coming here looking for a better life, but I do believe that we need to vet people that are coming here. I'm not saying stop them and put them in detention camps, but we need to get them opportunities, but we also need to vet them, making sure that we have the right people coming in and giving them opportunities to live right here in the United States. And I think that together we can have a great country. I believe in diversity, and we need that right here. We need to continue having diversity right here, allowing other people who don't look like us, don't think like us, to come here to live right here with us, because I think they can bring something that we don't have and make us even greater. So yes, I believe in that. But I don't want anybody coming through the borders who are looking to hurt us or do us harm right here on our own soil. So that's the only problem I would have with allowing somebody coming in. But yes, there. I was not born right here in the United States. Give you a story about myself. I was not born in the United States. I was born in Germany, but I was a naturalized citizen because of my parents were citizens, and I was born on American soil in Germany. But I had a birth certificate that said I was naturalized. My mom always told me, you need to keep this birth certificate in a safe place because you cannot get another one, which was true. I had a brother that was born over in Germany also, right before I was born, and he was told the same thing. My birth certificate did not come from here. It was not from a consul here, but it came from over in Germany while we were over in Germany. And I keep that birth certificate in a fireproof safe because if something happens, I have to be able to show that I am a citizen. I was not born right here in the United States. So I can't run down to Jefferson County and get a birth certificate. I can't go down to the health department and get a birth certificate. I have to keep up with my birth certificate myself and make sure nothing happens to it.
Wow. Now, one of the things I wanted to talk about is kind of this sense of complacency that we may get from people who may feel like they are far removed from the circumstances. Angela Davis, there's a quote, one of my favorite quotes says that they come for me in the morning, they will come for you in the night. Meaning that eventually, if we're complacent, if we kind of sit back and we don't realize that, hey, these same principles that are being applied to do harm to people, as you stated, that nothing's new under the sun, that those things can come back around and hit us. So one of the things I want to talk about was ICE. We hear this word a lot, which stands for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Now, I always knew that I was for immigration, but I had to look it up today. Help us understand what ICE is and how that can impact us on a local level.
Well, ICE is an enforcement agency through the government, federal government. And if you cross the border, you're going to get checked by immigration. And if you don't have the proper documents, they're going to detain you. And just like what Richard said earlier, it's mostly a misdemeanor. And my wife and I was just talking the other day how this lady who's a Canadian, she was just jogging out on a jog. And she just so happily went across the border, not knowing that she crossed over into the United States as she was jogging. She did not have a passport with her. She got picked up and was detained. Her mother brought her passport, and they still held her 2 weeks after her passport was brought to the detention center. And she was just jogging, and they found out that she was a Canadian citizen, but they still held her here in the United States 2 weeks past the time they received a passport. So they let you know it can happen. It can happen to anybody accidentally. She crossed over the border and was detained, to me, longer than what she should have been detained because she was identified. All the documents were there to show that she was a Canadian citizen, but yet they still held her. But speaking of Angela Davis, I grew up 2 blocks from her. Her mother was the first person I stayed with when I first went to elementary school. I was in her classroom, and I've always been a fan of Angela Davis. That was a good neighbor of mine.
Awesome. So, this complacency that we're seeing with some, who see the images and feel very far removed from the situation. Do you have any thoughts around that? Those that may be feeling complacent, like they really don't need to say anything, and that this is just, this is the law. We just you follow the law, kind of like I would say Jeff Sessions said. But do you have any thoughts around that?
I do. For a long time, the evangelicals and the Christian community were silent, and now they're speaking up. And I think because they're speaking up now, some things are getting done. But when they were silent, the administration was getting away with all kind of acts that were against humanity. But right now, I think when they mess with the kids, I think they reached to a new low when they separated a mother who was breastfeeding her child, took the child away from the mother at that particular time of feeding. I think they reached a new low when they did that. Somebody had to say something when they saw a mother feeding that child and that child was taken away at that point. That was the lowest I think that we could ever reach or go to. And now the evangelicals are speaking out now. They're saying that, hey, what we're doing is wrong. And I do believe that they have the ear of those that are in charge right now. And because of that, we can see them making some type of amends to where I heard they said 500 of those children were placed back with their parents. But it doesn't seem like the numbers are correct because they said 500, but then they still have over 2,000 that are not with their parents. So I don't know if the numbers are correct. Some kind of way the numbers are not adding up to me.
That's right.
And I believe that we do not know the truth about what's going on because we're not allowed to see a lot of what's happening right now is behind closed doors. There's no transparency in what's going on right now. They do not want us to come in to see what's happening. But you know what? Back during the Holocaust, they said, hey, let's take a picture of this because they're going to say it did not happen. But because they have pictures of what happened, of those camps, those concentration camps, and all that happened in those concentration camps, we have evidence that it did happen. But right now, our congressmen, our senators are not allowed to go and see those children that are being detained right now. And somebody said over 25,000 people coming here to Alabama. That's a lot of people. I know if we get 25,000 people in Alabama, there are people placed other places, and they do not have an idea or a clue where their children are. And I'm quite sure the children may not be able to tell them who their parents are, or may not even be able to say who they are in a way that they can be able to hook the parents and the child back up together again. That's going to be a big problem, to which is going to create other problems right here in the United States, because they are not going to be able to get the child and the parent back together again. And we're going to see right here foster kids right here in the United States birthed out of this.
Right, right. And so you find on social media, a lot of people are, trying to say, well, this is an issue that was started by the Democrats, or this is a Republican issue. In my opinion, it's neither. Do you have thoughts on that?
The blame game is not need to be is not something that need to be played right now.
Right.
We need to take action on this situation right now. Whatever party's in charge, we have a party that's in charge right now. It has control of every branch of government there is right now. They need to step up and be a leader. If that's, if they have the leadership capabilities, they need to step up in their leadership role right now and take care of this problem. They the one who created this zero tolerance. Now they need to do away with the zero tolerance and put these families back together again. Unite the children with their parents, and from there, what they need to do is vet the families and see, hey, if you're not a problem person, allow them to come onto the United States at that point, not to separate them, but as a family, keep them together. I believe in family. I wholeheartedly believe in family. That was the first right here when God created, in God's creation, He created the family. And I believe in family, not separating the family, but keeping the family together. That is a strong unit to me right there. And I teach that to my children. I was taught that growing up, and I believe in having a strong family. So I do not want to see.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I do not want to see these families broken up. I want to see these families put back together right now.
Right. And I think, I think that's definitely, where we need to be with this type of discussion is, maintaining the family unit. What we've seen in what we've termed the war on drugs, and now we have a war on immigration, is that there's been a privatization of our prisons. There's been a privatization of our detention camps. And some people have argued that economic incentive has put disproportionate favor on incarcerating people, locking them up, putting them in detention centers for crimes that don't necessarily warrant that type of punishment, and that type of punishment doesn't necessarily reduce the rate of that type of crime happening again. Can you speak a little bit on your personal opinion on privatization of prisons and detention centers and how that has impacted our criminal justice system in the U.S.?
Yes, that is big business now. We have over-criminalized. We need some criminal reform right now here in the United States. It has become a business, a big business, to where we're concentrating on building more jails, more prisons than we are schools right now. We put more money into the criminal justice system than we are putting into education. That is a problem to me. We're going into privatized prisons right now. They're making money hand over fist right now over privatized prisons. and they're not run the same way as the prisons that are right here under the under the government. They do not have to run the same. So I have a problem with that also. But what we need to do is put more money into education, educating our people, not more money into prisons, allowing prisons to be privatized, and that way it can become profitable to those that want to correct the system to where we are going out there, putting more people in the jail, giving them long sentences, and then they're making profit off of the whole system. I have a problem with that, and I am against that, and we need to put an end to it.
Right, I agree. Richard, do you have any more questions?
Well, I do have another question. It's not necessarily exactly related to immigration, but I wanted to touch on this. I know that there's recently been legislation proposed around this whole civil forfeiture law. I'm sure Mr. Pettway is familiar with it. Basically, it's a law in Alabama that allows local police officers, sheriffs to kind of confiscate property, take possession over it prior to any type of due process in the criminal justice system. And I just kind of like to get your thoughts on that. What do you think that law is antiquated? Does it need to be changed, or do you support it?
I do not support that law, and uh, that law was terrible from the beginning. I saw where a lot of people lost a lot of property, and they weren't even convicted.
Right.
Their property was seized. It was sold. The money was given to the department of whoever arrested that person. But a lot of times those cases never arrived in court. They never had the opportunity to go for the judge. But their property was taken. It was seized. I saw a lot of those cars turned into police cars, boats, houses. A lot of things were taken. But these people never had their due process in court. But their property was converted over to, it was liquidated and became property of the department or whoever arrested them. So no, that was not fair to those individuals. I do not believe that the police are above the law. To me, what they did was they went out there and they stole property and they took it for themselves and they sold it and they used the profits from it. They became a criminal to me at that point because that's what they say stealing is. You take something that don't belong to you. And to me, that's what they did. They took something that did not belong. They did not go to court to get it. A lot of times, those items were sold, and the persons who owned those items never had an opportunity to ever get them back. I had a friend who had to go through the same process. But the bad thing about my friend, he was a law enforcement officer that worked with me in the sheriff's department. He had two vehicles. This happened recently that were taken from him. He did nothing wrong. Somebody else was driving the car. The car was taken. He did nothing wrong. The car belonged to him. They held his car for years. For years. This guy did nothing wrong. But they held his property and did not want to give it back. I have a problem with that. He had a problem with that. He saw what the forfeiture law was doing to innocent people. So a lot of innocent people have been affected by the forfeiture law. So I believe right now there is legislation to change the forfeiture law. And a lot of judges would not allow it to happen. And I'm glad that they're about to put a stop to these illegal forfeitures that are going on right now.
Okay, awesome. So, Mr. Petway, I know that you all started a new initiative today for the campaign. Can you just take a moment to tell our listeners about that?
Uh, yes, I want to inform the public that we are in a runoff. July 17th, I need you to go back out to the polls so we can finish what we have started. We are looking to get the nomination, the Democratic nomination, for the position of sheriff here in Jefferson County. We have a great and excellent team that is working with us. So look at the website because we have a lot of new things that are about to come out on the website. We're going to be addressing a lot of issues on the website. So issues and topics such as immigration, we will tackle those type of topics out there on the website. We will even talk about these illegal forfeitures or forfeitures that are happening right now by law enforcement that I claim and deem as illegal, to make sure that nobody will ever get their property taken from them without due process. We will be talking about a lot of things. So we want you to be engaged. We want you to be informed. So check out the website and all the new things that are coming out on the website.
Well, we thank everybody for tuning in tonight to hear from our sheriff candidate about some very important topics, just a very candid conversation. Want to remind you to go to the polls to vote on July 17th. Vote your choice, but definitely take time to find out more information about candidate Mark Pettway. His website is pettwayforsheriff.com. Pettwayforsheriff.com. We'll catch you on another episode. Have a great evening.